everyone, Zach here. Today I'm going to walk through a new example of a plugin that I've written similar to the top command. So if you read the blog post where I wrote a plugin to parse out top, I did the same thing for lsof, like another command line utility that I know system administrators like to use, and I wanted to figure out a way to take that output and make it more structured. So I was going through the man pages, and there is an actual option, -F, which is meant to be used to take lsof data and send it to, some other application. The way the output comes out was a little bit unexpected. So the -F will give you like a vertical output, as opposed to kind of the tabular output you're used to seeing when you run lsof. And it looks like this. So if I show you kind of here on the left, you can kind of see, well, this input is pretty confusing, right? So if you focus in here at the top, so this is like the first process, that leading P, so that's the first process that we're dealing with. And then the way it works is there's a P, and if I keep coming down here, you'll see an F. So this is a file owned by that process. If I keep going down even a little bit further, I get another F, right? So that's another file opened by that process. And if I kept going, right, I would eventually hit another P, right? And that would be a new process, and then all its subsequent files. So it's kind of how the output works when you run it with -F. And while it's not useful to the human eye, it makes it a lot easier to parse out. So I wrote a Python filter plugin to actually parse out those prefixes and create a structured data model. And what you can do is similar to the way you run the lsof top that I wrote earlier. A top parse. We now have an lsof parse. So what you can do is if you run a command in Ansible to run lsof-f, you can then pass in the standard outlines, which is going to be a attribute returned from the command module. And I've registered it, you can see here, to this lsof raw variable. So pass that through to the lsof parse, and what you get out is a nice array of files with the metadata that came back from lsof, right? So I've got my process ID, my process group, some other login name, things like that, and then I've got the file details as well. And there's a few different ways you could use this data, right? I have some examples here where you leverage, so one, in general, you're going to run the lsof parse, pipe it through the plugin to get the data, and then you can filter the data after that, right? So in this first example, I'm just sorting them by file size, right? So sorting them decreasing. In the second example here, if I scroll down, I'm actually going to filter to file sizes greater than a particular amount. Of course, there are other things I can do. I didn't even highlight here, so actually in this first one, I'm not just sorting all of them by file size, I'm actually sorting systemd command files by file size. So a lot of different stuff you can do there once you've passed it through the plugin. And then you can leverage all the built-in plugins available to you with the Ansible and Jinja. So just to show you how it works in action, I've got this pretty simple playbook here where I'm running those commands, and then I write it out to a file. So let me go ahead and run it. And I'm just running this against my Raspberry Pi, so should get some, verbose data here. I've got this file that I wrote it out to, and as you can see, like I mentioned, kind of in the example on the blog post, I've got this array here, and then each object is going to represent a file. So in this case, this is the root directory, and if I keep scrolling down, so I can get something more interesting. So this is an actual file. It's a registry file, and yeah, so this is kind of the output that you're going to get, right? This is a pretty long output because there are a lot of open files on the system. But once you run that command, you can then filter it and divvy it up as needed to identify kind of the piece of information you're looking for. So if that's helpful, feel free to drop any notes in the comments, or if you have any issues using the commands. And again, if you haven't seen the video where I do the same thing with top, it's linked here on the right side of this blog post, as well as on my YouTube channel. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening.